GM.
Welcome to Mammoth May. Today we are coming live to the world from New York City, the Big Apple. Welcome back, Rob. How you doing, man?
I think we're going to be coming hard and fast today. It's our first show with guests, so I'm excited. We've got a stellar lineup. First one, we're breaking out of the echo chamber right away and into the world of robotics. Nils from Ayuki. He had an amazing podcast that we did with Arthur. That was super fun. We've got Eric from Fireblocks coming a little bit later. And then Nick from Derive, a super exciting Celestia native app that personally I think is a great way to kick off Mammoth May. I'm doing great. It's another beautiful day in Florida. And I'm excited to join you up there in the Big Apple here pretty soon.
Good stuff happens live, baby. We are coming live with a robotic appearance in our first guest. So looking forward to that. We're going to jump into the latest happenings on the frontier across our industry, the lovely crypto, which is absolutely pumping, and of course, tech, finance, AI, and money. Welcome to the Rollup TV, and it's good to have you guys back. Second episode, first one with the guests. The ride's not going to be perfect, but we're figuring it out as we go. Let's rock and roll, and let's dive into OpenAI. Here we go.
So I think the first thing to mention here is that Sam started this with Elon and has tried to basically overthrow the Elon supervillain his entire career, right? So now he's appointing a new CEO. That's what's happening here. Sam has appointed a new CEO who's really in charge. Seems like there's a bit of a struggle for power. My take here is basically Sam is trying to be Elon. He's trying to be a serial entrepreneur, and he's going to start launching companies left and right, instituting new people in his place, and then ultimately come back in and try to recoup power. Remember, Sam almost got thrown off the board once already. Was this a strategic play? Was this his own doing, or is there someone else controlling things behind the scenes? What do you think, Andy?
Well, I mean, what's interesting is that the Instacart CEO, Fidji Simo, who will become the new OpenAI CEO for applications. Simo is already on the OpenAI board, and she'll be tasked with helping OpenAI in scaling the traditional company functions. We didn't really get any details from Sam as to what that means, but people are basically saying that this makes Sam look weak, and they have no idea what's going to happen with the future of OpenAI. Now, the other interesting part here is that this is ahead of rumors that OpenAI is aggressively negotiating with Microsoft around an IPO. So it kind of poses the question, will Sam Altman be the CEO of OpenAI 5 years from now? Or is he a Zuckerberg who stays in the pocket, stays in the driver's seat? Or is he going to pass the reins off? AI is such a weird moral dilemma topic that, people are giving them shit for even charging money for ChatGPT. So, I don't know. Whenever you have like these autistic gigabrains in the driver's seat, things are just wonky. Let's just put it that way.
I think you raise a good point. I think incentives here are one, financial, of course, but ultimately it's power. These guys are playing the long game. They can see 5, 10, 100 years down the horizon, biohacking and robots come along. Who knows? It could be longer than that. And so ultimately, are they trying to make a quick financial buck that we've seen time and time again? Or are these guys trying to balance the power dynamic for something that could be longer time horizon? Maybe that does mean that Sam's already starting his second, third, fourth company. We'll talk about World in a little bit and everything that has to do with robotics. Ultimately, I do see a world where a lot of these companies start to work together. You can already see how Elon is posturing for Tesla, working with SpaceX, working with XAI. All of these things are part of a broader thesis and vision that I think Elon has, I think Sam has, and ultimately these guys are playing not just one game with their particular company, they're playing the long game with multiple companies, and these guys know how to scale.
Dude, so I saw Sam and Elon were like, Sam wrote to him and was like, yo, can we be friends and put like the 2 finger emojis together or something? It was, they were like on Twitter, like trying to like bring it back to life. So anyway, what's exciting for me is that I've been all in Coinbase stock for like the last 2 years. If you guys know me, I did pretty well in the 2021 bull run. Bought a house, got some gold, decided to just full port my stocks into coin down there in the bear market. So I'm very bullish today. Coinbase is up 25%, I believe. I'm euphoric. It's a good day. It's a good day for the industry. This just marks this is like the moment of how big crypto has gotten that is now inevitable that this is going to be more. So like my take here is Coinbase the first of many? Yes. Like I think that there will be more and more crypto companies joining the S&P 500. Coinbase obviously being the clear leader, but there's a lot to come. And so for me in my portfolio right now, I'm excited about this. I support Coinbase. Stock kind of got beat up in the last 3 months, but absolutely flying right now. My target's 1,000, not financial advice. I love Coinbase.
Oh my goodness. One day, Andy, you're toting stable coins is a terrible intermediate step towards the global reserve currency. Next day you're buying stocks and euphoric about the Coinbase IPO. One day we'll
Dude, but you're not all in like I am.
in.
You're probably holding like the typical S&P. I don't even know if you own any stocks.
Wouldn't that make me more all in?
Oh man,
but he still has some things off chain. Look, get like the rest of us. I thought you were crypto native.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. So look, I'm gonna hold that stock for a while, and I'm excited to see how that goes.
I still want to say about the Coinbase stock here, and I know we've got a new segment coming up on AI, but I do think it's worth mentioning that we've long talked about how the core use case is something that's going to look invisible to the end user. Well, you know what? Anyone who owns indices in their brokerage account now has crypto running in the back end. It's invisible to the end user and they own it. I think this is absolutely going to be a pioneering move. They're going to start a trend. There's going to be more companies that from crypto join the S&P 500, and I think they're all going to work together. You can see how Coinbase is going to start to provide services to other companies in the S&P 500, BlackRock, Stripe. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and I'm particularly excited for how we're going to see the combination of tokens and stocks and equities. I think Coinbase will launch a token at some point, and what happens on the public markets and the stakeholders when that happens, I think is a super, super interesting field to explore.
Yep. Like I said, coin to 1,000. I think you are further making me bullish. So we're going to talk about AI.
You're in a good spot for the Coinbase airdrop. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not sure that's ever going to happen. Imagine if Base launches a token, that would be pretty wild. But we'll see kind of how that one plays out. We've got an interesting new Pope here, and there's a once in a lifetime event, effectively, which is a new Pope, and there was white smoke from the what's it called, the it starts with a C. There's like that Cavill or something.
Yeah, there's a movie about it.
I'm not very religious, to be honest, so I'm not really sure.
Did you go to Catholic school?
Yeah, 2 years. Didn't do too well there.
The conclave. The conclave. We saw white smoke coming from the conclave. And I think what you're trying to get to is that there was one core mission that our new Pope Leo has in mind, and it's around AI. And I think one of the reasons that he chose the name Leo was a throwback to a previous pope, the last Pope Leo, who was around during the time of the Industrial Revolution. And there was a lot of Luddites maybe in the Catholic Church. They want people in church praying. They don't want people working in factories. There's a fundamental divergence and divide here when it comes to the cultural scene. And Pope Leo sees that coming again with AI. So he named himself Pope Leo. He talked a lot about AI in his speech. I mean, when you see AI taking this level of center stageness in the public eye, what do you make of this?
I mean, it just throws me back to how Trump originally decided his tariff policies, right? He was like, look, we're going to, take the square root of this and that. And, we're going to divide the exports by the imports or something. And we're going to, this is our tariff policy. And then you ask ChatGPT what the tariff policy should be. And that's what it is. And so this guy Signal here has some super good takes about it, how effectively we are in a world here where the Pope is basically he makes a joke about A16Z being that, the Pope has his name after some sort of AI, setup here. And so our new Pope Leo is concerned about AI, saying Pope Leo, he indicated on Saturday that his papacy would follow closely in the footsteps of late Pope Francis, telling church cardinals that they should take up the precious legacy and identifying artificial intelligence as the main challenge for human dignity. What do you take away from our boy Signal here as far as his thoughts on this particular matter?
Well, I think it's important to note that this guy is not some, religious fanatic that is not well read and not academic. He's got a math degree from Villanova. He does comment on the church's moral authority and its academic strength. And I almost think about these religious groups as their own sovereign ideologies. You can think about American nationalism, Chinese nationalism. Well, we have Catholicism, and that is once again another ideology that has a significant following, just like a country has its citizens. So for new Pope Leo to comment on the nature of AI in the evolving way that it is right now, I think ultimately he has his finger on the pulse. He knows that this is going to be a trying time for society as a whole as we start to grope with these new progressions, right? So if we're going to be moving in this direction, right, I think the question is, will AI bring us closer or farther away from God? I think that is the church's question here. And I think, there's a real push, whether that's going to happen or not. But ultimately, I think, we can use these powerful technologies we can use for better or for worse. We can use them for good or for evil. And I think the church is going to be primarily concerned with using these technologies for good. They've obviously got their own ideologies. They're going to want to see the technology used in a certain way. And I do think that, if we have knowledgeable people in charge of these ideological functions, they're going to be able to guide their constituents in such a way that they understand the technology and they utilize it and leverage it for their own purpose. And I think in the church's case, that they're going to try to use AI to get people closer to God, whatever that may mean. I'm curious to see how that's going to happen. And ultimately, I think everyone's curious as to the pace at which this is going to happen, because the quicker this happens, the more shocking it's going to be for society as a whole to try to adapt.
How does the church tie into the USD? How does the church's AI abilities tie into the USD's world reserve currency? Well, here we are.
I think I got an answer for that one. And it's ultimately, it's indicative of corporations as a whole. It's, why have sovereign nations been the only ones to launch fiat currencies? Why is the church not launching fiat currencies? Why is Meta thinking about launching a stable coin? I think we're going to comment on that a little bit more in a bit. Why is Meta getting into the currency game and not the church? But the US dollar is the world reserve currency, and we have banks. Soon, states in the United States are going to be launching their own stable coins. We have World Liberty Fi, obviously sponsored heavily by the Trump family, is going to be launching a stable coin. This, and I think we'll get into this as well with Nils, who's going to be joining us in a few minutes. The concept of hyperlocalism is something that he talked about on our last show with Arthur. And I think he talked about it in terms of robotics and compute and why it's going to be possible from an energy standpoint. We'll have the power to power these hyperlocal robots and economies. I do think we're going to see hyperlocalism further entrenched into our society. We're going to get hyperlocal currencies. And what is that going to look like? Well, it's going to look like Meta launching a stable coin. Maybe it's going to be looking like the church launching a stable coin. I think we're going to continue to see these patterns perpetuate.
These like tokenization things are like on the last podcast here in New York with Yelena, we talked about this as well. And I mean, our fund, we even just invested recently into a company, Rob, that is bringing like the Web3 payment rails to restaurants, and they already have a ton of these in Asia, and they have some of the biggest brand names that they're, your McDonald's bucks, right? Like these are kind of things that are starting to come about. With regards to the world reserve, I think people overreacted so heavily off of the tariffs in terms of all markets. But what I really think happened here is that Trump basically rolled a snowball that is now unstoppable, in the sense that it is clear that there are ways that political leaders can jeopardize the stability of their long-term currency or trust in their currency, and that can't really be taken back. And so my thought here is that we overreacted, and the whole world overreacted to the actual consequences and problems that would come with these tariffs. But what people are, I think, are underestimating is the erosion of trust in politicians, institutions happening more broadly. And so I think that's the only question here with regards to the USD status, more so than whether or not it'll be kind of taken down.
So I agree with you in part. And I think the part where I agree with you is the erosion of trust in politicians. I think that has been a trend that's been happening for quite some time. And I think that's why you see a rise of Trumpism, populism. Ultimately, we had the Democrats fall into this very bureaucratic party that ended up becoming almost like this Goliath of government. Everything was it was such big government, such slow moving ships that there was no pace of innovation. And so we saw the rise of populism because people were fed up, and there was so much of the blob, the governmental blob that was happening behind the scenes. No one really likes that. No one really likes the fact that things are happening in the shadows and we don't see it. So now we have the rise of populism. Trump is the populist president. We're going to continue seeing that. And I do think the part where we may separate is that they're going to see this stretch into multiple industries. We talked about stable coins. You have the erosion of trust in the dollar. Well, so you see alternatives rise up, whether that's an Apple stable coin, a Meta stable coin, or Bitcoin, or a Hope stable coin. Apple has already got enough cash that they're one of the biggest banks on earth. They're one of the biggest. If you just take their cash holdings, they're one of the biggest GDP producing earners of the entire world. So I think ultimately we're going to see more and more of the fundamental proliferation, the entropy of innovation start to reach the fringe. And I'm very, very happy to welcome our friend Nils back to the show. Nils is up now, and he was talking about hyperlocalism on our last podcast, which has been a concept that's really stuck with me. And as we sort of explore these topics of the erosion of trust in politics, in financial systems, in the market as a whole, we're going to start to see localism continue to accelerate. And ultimately, I think hyperlocalism is where we're going to go. And that's where we're headed. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. So we have the rise of robotic money. So today, I think what was really, really, really cool from Nils' recent post was this robot that is going to go on a flight, or perhaps it was a flight attendant or even a TSA agent. We're going to talk about that. We're gonna roll him in here. Nils,
welcome,
you are
Nils.
in the screen. Welcome to the Rollup TV, man. Good to see you.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sound is crisp as always, man. And are you in Hong Kong?
I am. Yeah. Greetings from Hong Kong. It's May 14th over here already. That's how fast Asia moves. What can I say?
And Bitcoin's got to be at like 200K already too, huh?
No spoilers.
Oh man, it's still May 13th over here, but we're happy to see you. And we've been really, really excited about this new trajectory for the Rollup TV, and this new trajectory that it seems like the world is on. You helped open our mind to the concept of hyperlocalism, everything that's happening in the world of robotics. Maybe you could start by just giving a quick catch up on where things have gone since our last episode. The China-US trade war started and ended since our last episode. Maybe you could catch us up on everything that you're seeing over there in Hong Kong.
I don't know that it's ended. There's a 90-day ceasefire, right? But I think the US has recently had a bit of a wake-up call that for the first time, really since World War II, the US is not the clear winner in a very important area of tech. Now, I would argue that China is actually meaningfully ahead. in this particular area of tech when it comes to robotics and machine perception. But you don't have to grant me that. You just have to admit that for the first time, it's not super clear that the US is on top. And that hasn't been the case for anything really since World War II. And I think that this is largely what the trade war is about, that the new administration wants to force as much industry to come back to the US, manufacturing to come back to the US, because Shenzhen, this city just across the border here in Hong Kong, is the number one place in the world for making hardware products, and it's not even close. An anecdote I shared last time I was on, right, was as we were working on a robotic product of sorts, we needed a special camera, a camera that has never been made before. You know, we couldn't find a vendor that had a camera with these kinds of characteristics, and we could get a one-off made of this camera for just a few $100, and it was on our desk, within a matter of days, less than 2 weeks, which is you can't iterate on hardware at that speed in the US or really anywhere in the West. And what this means is that, robotics is, of course, it's partially a software race, but it's also a hardware race. And if push comes to shove and it's about who can make the most drones, who can make the most robots, China would win that today. And if you don't understand why that's a big deal, you have to not just look at the economy, but also look at what would happen if it was actually to capacity. Like German tanks may have been, Americans could make 12 tanks for every one German tank. If you look at those numbers now for Navy, like maybe American ships are better, but I've seen numbers as high as China being able to produce 90 ships for every one ship that the US produces. So getting production capacity back to the US is very important. And I think that's really what the trade war is about.
Yeah. So with this accelerated timeline here that you mentioned and just accelerated speed of development and delivery specifically from China, what's your ETA for humanoid robots in, my house, in everyday homes? Is this like a 5-year plan, 10-year plan? When will I have like a little robot assistant? Yo, Nils, I think you need to refresh your other browser. Sorry about that, man.
Yeah. Cool. And while you're getting that going, I think you're putting together a picture here of so many more robots, and you're also putting together the rationale for why it's necessary to have production capacity, not only in the States, but for any country that wants to be independent with its national security. It's going to have production capacity, and it's going to have robots to man that production capacity. So you're talking about the scale and the level at which we're producing these robots. Please pick up where you left off.
The best cell phone factories in China can make one smartphone per second now, right?
Wow.
Like they're on a whole other manufacturing game, and we have a lot of catching up to do in the West if we want to be able to outproduce in terms of quantity, but honestly also for quality. I think the meme that China creates cheap knockoffs has been very slow to die. It was many years ago now that Tim Cook of Apple came out and said, you don't go to China for cheap manufacturing anymore. You go there for the best manufacturing. But, the meme that China just makes cheap knockoffs, that's still hanging around from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. But that's just not the case anymore. Chinese cars are very, very well made, right? Like,
yeah.
This just is what it is. Like, those are good cars. They're not cheap, rickety cars. A fun thing here in Hong Kong, a Tesla is an Uber X, right?
Yep. They all are Teslas there, man.
Yeah.
Nils, quick question for you. Do you think, like, you brought up the national security concern of a lack of production capacity. Do you think that is still as high a concern given the ceasefire that we have in the trade war right now and sort of the friendlier tensions between these two? Do you see that sort of tension starting to subdue? And do you think it's still as necessary to have the level of production capacity that we're talking about?
I don't think that China is a military threat to anyone in the West. I don't think there's any reason for anyone in the West to be afraid of China. I don't think China is on some imperialist bent, want to go out and conquer and impose their will and be colonialist or any of these things. So it's, a little bit, since the US does want to engage in some soft forms of colonialism and imperialism, etc., they have wanted to be the absolute uncontested military power and have been since World War II. And we don't know what the world order will look like if the US is not an uncontested military power. If someone could say, actually, no, it's not cool if you do that. And if you do that, we'll stop you. We don't know what that world looks like.
No. I think people are kind of scared of that and of just like robots and humanoids in general, where you see these movies from back in the day that kind of freak you out and you like I think I saw something on Aoki's page about your robots in supermarkets. Like that's just got to scare the shit out of people. You just like have a robot running around in a supermarket. You also had this one on that you were suggesting would come on the plane, right? So maybe you could just like talk us through what's going on there. Like, are you bringing robots on planes? Like, isn't there an explosive risk there? What's going on here? And what are they doing in supermarkets?
We are kinda bringing a humanoid robot on a plane. It turns out that it's very, very difficult to travel with a humanoid robot. Especially when there's a trade war going on. I don't want to name names because I don't know if they want this to be public, but a partner project of ours with a similar robot had the battery for that robot seized in customs.
Yep.
So they're still, just the battery. They're still waiting for the battery. We've been warned that just the hands of the robot could be seized. It's not easy to travel with these things. Our humanoid robot has been invited to come speak at a conference, which is cool. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get a replacement body in the United States, transfer the software to this replacement body, even though they're not fully the same make. So we know, like, we're not entirely sure how well this will go. And then bring the cosmetic pieces of the robot, like the chest plate, etc., that makes our robot look like our robot, and kind of assemble that in the States, because we don't trust that U.S. Customs will not just seize our robot.
Wow.
And when you're talking about transferring the software from one robot to another, we have this concept in crypto called interoperability. That's sort of the impression that I get from talking about robot to robot transferring of things. Maybe every robot still has the functionality of an ears and an eyes and a mouth, and they can, perceive digital and audio, video and audio information, and therefore respond to it in real time. But when we're talking about, I want to call it subliminal robot to robot communication without anything that's really happening out in the open, what kind of, is it email, Bluetooth? What kind of technology underscores the robot to robot communication?
Robot to robot communication is very rare today. But a friend of ours, Six, who is working on fighting robots, like boxing robots, had this great quote that a robot is really just a Linux server on legs. Kind of true, actually. Like if you look under the hood software wise of what's inside a Unitree robot, like there's a Linux server in there. Robots don't have an app store, so if you are not comfortable programming a Linux server, you're not going to get your robot to do stuff. There is no good robotics operating system today. Like that's a huge opportunity that we're hoping to be able to seize on with Aoki down the line. There's something called ROS, the robotic operating system. And I say this even though I know some of the creators. The industry consensus is kind of that's a flaming bag of dog shit. It's not easy. It's not easy to build on. It's just, the open source thing that's out there to get started.
Yeah.
And some of the better funded robotics companies now, in Web 2 at least, are starting to look at how can they build a robotics operating system, which I think is absolutely a huge opportunity. It's just not cheap to build an OS. If I was sitting on $100 million in the bank, I would start building today, because I think it's almost certainly the case that 10 years from now, the OS with the largest install base in the world is not going to be Windows. It's not going to be iOS. It's going to be whatever is running on the robots, because regardless of if they're humanoid robots or not, very, very soon, buying robots will be as common as buying automobiles. And I think within 10, 15 years, the average household will spend more on robots than they spend on cars.
I'm somewhat unimpressed by the current design that we see in the robotics. And I know we're just scratching the surface now, but it just seems so obvious that, we're going to be putting these robots to work. Why not give them 3 arms? Why not give them, another leg, another arm, another hand, more fingers? Like, why are we stopping at humanoid, right? When we can, with this technology, go beyond this and improve the balance of this technology. I think most of these are proof of concepts. And Nils, I do want to ask you, because, I think we're running up on time here pretty soon. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think a lot of people, maybe boomers, friendlier term is my mom and dad, they want to know, like, why are robots really coming for their jobs? And if so, because we hear this all the time, what are the 3 things that people in mainstream industrial jobs today, what can they do to prepare themselves for the robot invasion and ultimately help them keep their jobs and not be replaced by a robot?
Invest in your sense of agency. I think in an age of abundance in many ways, there's abundant cognitive resources, perhaps even abundant physical labor. What is going to help you succeed is having a great sense of agency. the belief that you can get things done. Like, I believe it is the case today already that everyone can ship an app. Absolutely everyone. And if you are not shipping your dream app today, that's an attitude issue. It's not a skill issue. You literally haven't tried. Like, dude, just sit down and tell the AI what you're trying to do. No one's stopping you. You could make the next top 3 app on the iOS App Store. You absolutely could, with no technical background. The reason people don't is, they don't believe in themselves. They don't have a sense of agency. Invest in your sense of agency. Teach your kids to have high agency, because, like when cognitive resources and physical labor become abundant, they're not going to need you to do low agency things. Like, no one's going to hire you to do low agency things, but there will be more opportunity than ever in history to do high agency things.
So then, Nils, what would your 10-year-old self say if we told them that you were building robots for a living?
Will they be able to play computer games with me? Probably. And that did come very, very quickly. It is tricky to, know if you're on the right side of history or not when working on technology that can take a lot of jobs. And one of the things that helps me sleep at night and look myself in the mirror is trying to apply AI and robotics in service of people that don't have such a great time in the workplace. Like creating AI tools that make it easier for people that work in retail to be good at their job, I think is a lot more meaningful to me personally than making AI that makes rockstar programmers be even better programmers.
Yep. And do you think that there's any specific country that's going to have the majority of these robots? Is it going to be China?
For sure, it's China. Like anything else is just massive cope. It is the case today that more than half of all robots in existence on the planet are on Chinese soil today. Like, that is a medical fact. And more than half of all robots that were sold last year were sold to China. So the gap is widening. Like, it's not even close. We're not playing the same game as China. We have so much catching up to do if we want to be a runner-up for this. Like, I have a humanoid robot. You can buy them here.
You have one in your house?
I will go show you right now. I can switch my camera.
Please show us the humanoid robot.
Yeah. Hold on. I would switch my camera in the other window, right?
Yeah.
All right. Nils is going to be back with his humanoid robot. I've only seen these with like the Boston Dynamics.
We're still waiting on it to come up. So we're getting a live look
at a Chinese humanoid robot.
Humanoid robot. All right. Nils, can you switch on the other? Thanks. Yeah, we all right. We got you.
We got you.
You're live.
All right, so we're here at the Alki Labs lab. We got a fake grocery store here, and right there's my.
That's what it was.
What is this, North Korea?
Yo, Terry.
Terry hanging here on the sex swing.
Wow.
Powered down.
Look at
and
that.
What is Terry doing?
He's a short king.
He's a sexual robot?
Yeah, he's not very tall. He weighs about 50 kilos. I am 6 foot for comparison. So he's a short boy.
5'11".
Okay.
Yeah,
Short
he
king.
looks about 3-4 feet. That's wow. And he's got what can he do? I mean, maybe next time we'll get a live look when Terry's feeling a little bit more awake.
Dude, he does absolutely nothing. Like, you have to be able to program him. When you buy him, you can only remote control him using this controller. Right? It's like an Xbox controller. You can walk him around. You can make him wave. You can make him reach his hand out. That's about it. If you want him to do anything else, you'd better be comfortable programming.
Nils, how important do you think video game players are going to be when it comes to piloting the next generation of robots?
So that's a very, very interesting question, right? Because there is this idea of having teleoperated robots, like robots that are remote controlled rather than autonomous. And you can remote control robots today with like a VR headset and special gloves and things like this. And what's interesting with that is, in theory, you can get, cheap labor to do work in expensive countries, right? The only real limiting factor is latency, like the speed of internet signals. Because if you're swinging around, a robot arm that has the power of a baseball bat, and you have a latency of 100 milliseconds, you're a liability, right? So finding low enough latency teleoperation is a challenge. But in theory, you can have cheap labor in Indonesia perform work in Singapore, for example.
So that's the breakthrough there. That's why it could be better than autonomy in the interim, at least, is that you can have these like scaled labor or scaled supervision effectively from wherever.
Yeah, so that already happens with service robots today in hotels and stuff, where there are robots with like human style arms and hands that can clean toilets, fold laundry, etc. But they do so with teleoperation. So, there's a worker like in the Philippines or something that is using a robot body and a VR headset to clean a toilet at a hotel. Like, this can be done.
Nils, last thing for you, and then we'll let you go. Who do you look up to in the robotic space? And are Tesla robots something to think about as being big and worthwhile, or is there better stuff out there?
I think that Tesla robots are not much more than a PowerPoint. I don't, I can touch this robot. It's real. I will wait to see what Tesla actually produces, right? When they sell a robot, I'll pay attention. But Boston Dynamics are obviously the OGs of robotics. They're fantastic. There are many, many really cool Chinese robotics companies like Engine AI and AGI Bot that don't get as much attention in Western media as Unitree.
Okay.
But they're fantastic. So check out Engine AI and AGI Bot. Those are really, really great robots.
Awesome.
Nils, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for calling in from Hong Kong. Great to have you on, and looking forward to coming out there. I think I'll probably be out there in September or October. I would love to come in and check it all out.
Do a podcast with Terry, man.
Oh, let's do it.
I'm so down, dude.
Absolute
Thanks,
pleasure, Nils. Thanks for coming on.
See ya.
Alrighty. Man, that was fucking crazy.
We got a live look.
First guest ever. Guy takes us into his robot factory for looking to tear the sex robot.
The fake grocery store employee.
Well, so that's what the supermarket was, right? I saw him at supermarket and I saw him on the plane. I didn't realize that. So they're training that robot on the supermarket, basically, and then they're using the fake supermarket to basically, stage a real environment. So, anyhow, up next we got our boy Eric, an institutional capital custodian from Fireblocks. Eric is going to talk to us about what he's seeing on the inside edge of the institutional crypto markets. There's a lot going on. Markets are absolutely ripping again today. I think it's clear to say that we're in a bull market. So looking forward to having Eric on. Let's bring him up.
Eric, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Hi, everybody. How are you doing?
Hey, doing well. My bags are pumping. Can't complain. Coinbase doing strong today. Everything else as well. You?
Very good. Very good. I'm excited about what's happening.
If you don't mind, where are you calling in from, Eric?
From Spain, actually.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us in a nice evening in Spain. I hope you've had a good day. And yeah, Eric, we'd just love a quick intro on yourself, man. Who are you, and what is your role at Fireblocks, and what is Fireblocks?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Eric Galansky. I'm the VP of Technology at Fireblocks. Been in engineering, like startup land, for the past 20 years or so. Kind of giving my age. And I lead the technology research at Fireblocks. So you actually brought the geek into this conversation. Maybe you wanted the
That's what we're
markets
here
guy,
for, man. No,
and
all good.
you brought the tech geek. So yeah, and maybe a few words about what Fireblocks is, because I think Fireblocks is in this unique place. Like, everybody knows who Coinbase is, and everybody knows like Ethereum and Solana, but then Fireblocks, in some parts of the ecosystem, we're like the most well-known company. Everybody knows Fireblocks, but the biggest name. And in some other places, it's like, Fireblocks. Can you explain what you do? So we are basically a provider of infrastructure for institutions to build on the blockchain and to use the blockchain, right? So we have different kinds of companies that use us. It can be all the way from like the serious banks and like the financial institutions, TradFi, going to like different exchanges that use Fireblocks, fintechs that use Fireblocks, and all the way to just investors, right? Like very big hedge funds and prop funds and all of those different investors in crypto. So some companies use Fireblocks because we provide them with a very safe institutional environment for using the blockchain. And a lot of other companies use Fireblocks because we help them build on the blockchain without having to deal with all of the nuances and complexities of building on the blockchain. And I think to some extent we facilitate their path into adopting this new world, right? Because I think it doesn't happen in one go. It's not like you go from traditional finance and in one day you go fully digital, everything is on chain, you use all of the new cool things. It takes a lot more time, and actually in a good way, because like not everything new we have happening in this ecosystem, we actually want people like you don't necessarily want your bank to be the most digital actor on chain. So we go the path with them, allowing more and more interaction in the places that make sense to them, and supporting them with basically anything they need to build.
So when we're talking about the institutional wave, we've been hearing this since 2018, and the institutional wave has been coming. It's been happening for quite a while now. What are you hearing from institutions? What are some of the things that they're saying on a daily basis that they're talking to you? What are they looking for? What do they want? What do they need in order to enter into this space? And ultimately, are they satisfied? Do they have the things that they need, or are they continuing to look for more? What are some of the things that you're hearing from the institutions directly?
Right. Yeah. So, they have been coming for a while, and I think it's important to understand. Like, we see the announcements, right? Like Stripe giving a huge announcement a few days ago. It's not like a week before that they were like, "Hey, we should do crypto," and then a week later they're like launching something, right? It's like years in the making. They bought a company that worked for years on this, right? So like there's been years of work where people were like, the institutions are coming, but nothing is happening. That was kind of the vibe in a lot of places, but people were building, right? Like companies were exploring. Some companies like wanted to understand the ecosystem better, understand the technology better. So they were building up teams. They were investing in research. They were trying to POC their use cases. Some of them were going faster. Some of them were going slower. And also in a lot of situations, they were just trying to understand what are the use cases that actually make sense. Like over the last few years, a few use cases emerge as kind of like more victorious over others, right? Like now we see that everything around stable coins and payments has been getting a lot of traction.
Yep.
Based on many years of companies experimenting with payments. Some of our payment clients have been working with us for like 3-4 years now. But some of the biggest releases are happening now and will continue happening, right? Because there are still quite a few big companies that we know work in the space. Like we see Visa, they're doing a lot of things in the space. We see MasterCard, they're doing a lot of things in the space. American Express, like everybody's doing things in this space. But each one is kind of going their own tempo and releasing the use case as they see, it evolve.
I think
and over time, go ahead.
No, I was just saying you have a very unique perspective on like, seeing things from kind of like a whole different lens than most people get to see them. in terms of crypto, at least.
Yeah, like one of the real luxuries we have at Fireblocks is we're connected. We have like more than 2,000 clients nowadays, and we're talking about institutional clients, right? So like
Yeah.
we talk to them all the time.
Okay, so I was
yeah.
gonna ask this, but I didn't know how to ask it. But since you brought it up, who are some of the craziest people that you're in group chats with, or doing business with, or clients that you think are really interesting?
Now, so first of all, obviously, I cannot say anything about companies that are not launching things or not saying things publicly. But think about the fact that we've been working with Bridge for a very long time, right? So like
Yep.
those kind of things, like they evolve into like the big announcements by the huge company. But yeah, we see those things earlier. Like again, I have to say, you brought the geek, so like I was very excited to meet a guy who's like very deep into smart contract wallets, but then I see him talking on like post-quantum cryptography in a different place, you know? Like that's the craziest people I meet most of the time. But yeah, coming from a slightly different direction.
So Eric, I got a question on the tech. Like, you see a lot of these traditionally blockchain-based companies like a Bridge, and you see them sort of exit to these larger companies that end up acquiring them and look to incorporate them into their technology. How plug and play, and taking maybe Stripe for an example, how plug and play is Bridge's technology with Stripe? Is there a lot more work that has to go into it to ultimately integrate it into their vertical stack? How do you see these things progressing, and what other work has to go into it so that we do get a more robust, mature, ready to use system?
Yeah. So I don't want to talk about them specifically, obviously, right? But like if we take it to the generic case, so first of all, I think we're going to see more and more of those M&A acquisitions because companies have been, so like initially the companies building in the blockchain space were very blockchain people, right? But over time, we saw more and more companies that have this mix between the blockchain people and the traditional finance people. They understand the traditional financial world, but they also understand the technology that this needs to be built on, and they iterate with different ways of solving these problems. So when you acquire a company that has been in that middle for a while, first of all, this company has a lot of expertise by then, and they know how to talk your language, like the language of the acquirer in this case. So they've been basically building towards this opportunity, towards being able to be integrated. And we already have those paradigms, right? So like when everything started, there was like one company doing everything. But now there are companies who are doing like on-ramp, and there's companies who do off-ramp, and there's companies who do like the AML and security stuff, and there's companies. So like there's actually categories. So you know what you're buying much more than just like those crazy guy that knows some technology. So I think a lot of work has been done to make those integrations actually easier and better.
Yeah.
And also, I think it has a lot to do with a lot of the blockchain companies understanding the regulation space.
And Eric, you and Fireblocks are in the spirit of this entire show. The Rollup TV is all about breaking out of the echo chamber, building a bridge between the traditional crypto blockchain-based companies and those on the real world, the ones that end up acquiring something like a Bridge, right? And so you guys have been able to cross that chasm. What advice do you have to founders and builders that are looking to get acquired? Right now, they're building in crypto and blockchain. What do they need to do to prove to the large companies that they could exit to that they're worth their weight in salt, and they have the technology, the product, and the team to ultimately get acquired and make a successful exit?
So I think a lot of these kind of acquisitions, they're based on like the relationship that has been formed while the company was operating independently, right? So like you basically need to do something that's very useful to those companies before. You will not just get bought because you have very smart people, right? So I think a lot of the thing that you don't see necessarily in the lower levels of the blockchain ecosystem is talking to a lot of clients, understanding their actual needs, understanding those companies. Like their needs are different, right? As an ecosystem in crypto Twitter, sometimes it sounds like we want institutions because we want like price go up, but we don't want institutions, right? Like even your conversation last time, stable coins, is it good? Is it bad? We're not sure, right? There's a lot of debate about this, but if you want to serve those companies, you want to help those companies and be acquired by those companies, you basically need to understand that it's not a black or white situation, that there's a lot of really good people in those companies that want to make the world better, and they will use this technology. It's a permissionless technology, right? They will use it. We will not stop them unless if we really, as an ecosystem, stray away from what we actually wanted to do with the permission ecosystem. And so what you need to adopt is the mindset of, okay, so how do I help them kind of take the path without forcing my opinion on what should be the end state? If right now what they need is things that help them solve compliance requirements, then just ignoring it and assuming that someday compliance will not be an issue is not helpful for them. So like you really need to meet them where they are and hopefully take them a few steps forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like one important aspect of that specific point is around like, you know, what you guys do at Fireblocks, which is custody, right? And I mean, amongst other things. But I feel that our terminology, one, like the word wallets for crypto is difficult to understand. I think like accounts may be a better way to think about it. But even just the actual infrastructure to own crypto, right? Like what we have is essentially these multi-sig wallets, these multi-signature wallets that helps us to, you know, securely have like this like social sharing effectively of security. But I'm not sure that institutions really can grasp their head on this or really back their security on this. You know, their either client funds, customer funds on something just like a Gnosis safe or a safe wallet. So what are you guys doing on the wallet side or on the custody side specifically that institutions are giving you guys the thumbs up for? Like how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I really do think the word wallet is like way overloaded by a lot of people doing different things in this space. So I think the average user, when they think about institutions, they'll be like, okay, I hold, I don't know, if I'm lucky, I hold 100K in some cryptocurrency, right? Great. I understand how to run this, but also very likely I'm holding 1K. But then there's this other company and they hold 1 million or 10 million or 1 billion or more. And I just assume it kind of translates similar, because who cares? The blockchain, it doesn't matter, right? It's a few bits and your Bitcoin account is either this or that. What's the big difference? But when you start thinking about the actual company, right? Like the bank does not have this one person or 3 people that if they agree, they can just move all of the money, right? It doesn't work like that. And more than that, even if it did, is it possible that the same people will want to make the decisions for all of the different flows? So let's say I have a company that has 1,000 people working for it, and now I need to do a server upgrade. I'm not calling the CEO and the CTO to like approve an upgrade to some machine, but then also call them when some trader in my company wants to invest 50K in some coin, right? Or even 10K or even 5K, right? So like we need different people having different roles. We need to have flows between them. We need to have different wallets that they manage, where some wallets are more for the operational side and some wallets are more for the like custody of long-term funds, cold wallets. And then there's like the flows that move money between them. And then there's user wallets that also need management, but they need automatic management. I need like to create user wallets via like backend work, right? So like there's this entire construct of a company, but then we kind of like, okay, it's a wallet. No, it's like it's again, like a lot of people love to compare this to AWS, where you start working on your project and you're like, I just need one server. Who needs more than a server? Like it can hold multiple programs. But then, I don't know, a couple of weeks later, you have like 10 servers. And then if you're a company and you have a couple of years, suddenly you're like, why do I have 3,000 servers? And it's like, okay, this service scaled and this service is like, you know, like it becomes really complex. And in the blockchain space, you take all of that complexity of a company and of all of the things we understand from software, and on top of it, you put the financial risk of everything, right? Because blockchain is all about the financial acts. You move value around. So now if you have some admin, they have access to funds or some funds, or maybe they have access and you're not even sure. Like permissions in organizations are hard. So what we provide them as a technology, we basically provide them a lot of different things. that allow them to manage this, could be chaotic thing, but also could be very structured, organized thing, where there's ways to create wallets, there's ways to move funds between wallets. It can support multi-chain. So again, like if your organization and you build up your permissions and then you decide I want to launch another blockchain, you don't want to redefine everything. You don't want to launch the new wallet and then all of the permissions and then update, and then somebody left your company. Okay, now we need to update 15 blockchains on the permission model. So like there's a lot of different things that just don't work when you're trying to simplify it to the lowest level. So what we do is we give them all of the different layers they need, whether if it's connecting to other services that can provide them things like, like regulatory oriented checks, whether if it's connecting to, by the way, to a lot of our partners also for things like liquidity and other financial operations, but also all of the technical infrastructure to just do it in a secure way. And there's a lot more to it, but like I'm not sure how deep we want to go into the tech.
Yeah, no, I mean, on the tech side, I mean, I appreciate that mental model because I was kind of trying to understand how, right? Because you've got these multifaceted organizations, you've got different risk parameters, you've got different teams within these organizations for certain, operations, and so bringing that together and bringing that on chain seems challenging. So I appreciate that. On the tech side, what I'm curious about is like, what are the institutions that you're working with most interested in? Like, is there a sector or an idea or a group of technologies that the institutions are really trying to get exposure to? Like where are you seeing the majority of the demand, and perhaps even where are you not seeing much demand on the tech side?
Yeah, so I think what institutions want first is like to set up the basics, right? Any institution that goes into the space, a lot of time, what they want to set up is like the basic flows. They want to set up their wallets, they want to set up their permission layers, their transaction flows, all of the different things they need to just operate basically within the blockchain. Once they do that, usually the second thing they'll want to do is they'll want to connect to the Fireblocks network. So like the Fireblocks network is all of the different, whether if it's service providers or is it partners that they need to interact with, because they will need, again, like they will need somebody operating liquidity, and they might need a banking partner, and they might need like on-ramps and off-ramps and network connections and a lot of different things, like exchanges connections, a lot of different things that they would need to connect. And I think over time, what they will want to do is like touching on the things that are the last thing before they can launch, right? So like in basic stable coins, the regulatory framework is a bit easier because payments is like a simpler transaction. You just send money. There's a bit of information you need to know, but in a lot of cases, it's pretty simple. But once you go into like the more complex workflows, tokenization of assets, securities, right? We're talking about possibly having like stocks on chain. That becomes something that has a lot more regulatory exposure. And so once you do that, you need to start thinking about technologies that are partially there, right? There's like technologies around privacy, there's technologies around identity. I think there's a lot of interesting tech that is being developed in those spaces right now. And I think they'll be the up and coming. A lot of people talk about them. Not a lot of people implement the latest ones in that space yet, but I think it will happen over time as well.
Got it. Cool, Eric. Well, awesome. Hey, thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Short conversation, but provided some insights here on just the wallet infrastructure, what people are looking for. Again, RWA's tokenization. We've heard so much of that, but also the privacy elements. And really, man, I hope the business is going to keep going well, because I know that typically, there's some sort of BIPs based on AUM and these types of things. So bull markets can be great for all. And yeah, thanks for coming out, man.
Sure thing. If I can only plug a small thing, we literally today released our grants program with a few partners, right? So it's not something we make money on. So it's kind of easier for me to plug it here, but we're collaborating with like PayPal and Solana and Stellar and Ton and ZK Sync. And we're basically trying to help builders, because I think bull market is amazing, but the VC funds have not really come back to crypto very easily. No. So if we can help power some of that with like our partners so that people build, right? That's something like you can find the Fireblocks grant program and just apply, talk to us, talk to me. Happy to engage on it.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. We'll see you soon and enjoy Spain, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Eric.
Congrats.
Thank you. It's exciting times.
I just feel like there's so much institutional, interest coming that it's just like, it's going to be just, it's just going to be so fast and so aggressive that we're going to look back in 6 months, 18 months and be like, wow. So
I do too. And I think ultimately the lines are getting blurred here between the two spaces, and that's again, what this is all about. We saw institutions coming into the space, tokenization, ETFs, RWAs, all of these things are sort of that one direction of the institutions coming in, making our space bigger. It's great. Also, we're going out. These crypto founders and builders are going out into the wild, getting real customers and real businesses to dog food tech. That is what it's all about. I think ultimately, and it's a great day. Coinbase making it into the S&P. Look, Coinbase is an institution. There's no doubt about it. So to think that the institutions are coming, they're here, and crypto companies are crypto institutions. These are one and the same.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I think that a lot of these MicroStrategy, 21 strategy things, these leveraged Bitcoin stuff are just going to accelerate the Bitcoin flywheel so much to the upside and the downside. We can cover that at a later time, but I think the targets for Bitcoin can be raised extremely high. But I also think that this next bear market for Bitcoin, if any of these things go belly up, it's going to be an interesting time for these kind of leverage spirals here.
The CeFi leverage, we had Celsius and
but that's just different. This is just out in the open, just blatantly just ripping debt to buy Bitcoin. But
it is different, but ultimately you see the levels of bloat that are in the industry. When a company goes belly up, take FTX, they've got to fire sale all of the holdings in order to liquidate and ultimately give
that's
back
what
to
I mean
shareholders.
for Bitcoin. But they could also run it way higher. So anyhow, we got Nick from Derive coming on up next. They are crushing it on the options in game in DeFi. Some of the Lira OGs as well from the synthetics ecosystem. And yeah, I'm just super curious to hear from Nick about DeFi, about their experience building so far, and what's coming up. So we'll bring him up and let's get him on. Nick, what's up, man? Good to see you.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to this.
Where are you calling from, Nick?
I'm calling from New York today. Changes frequently, but at the moment in New York.
Nice. You're probably just somewhere back there then in the horizon here. So good to see you, man.
Likewise.
It's great, man. I frankly, I'm really excited because I don't know a ton about Derive, but I've heard a lot of great things. So I'm looking forward to learning. I think there's, tons of through lines in these conversations about consumer applications, bringing this technology to those who are on the periphery at the moment. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved into building and founding a company, and tell us a bit about Derive.
Yeah, totally. So my background, I kind of got into Bitcoin in 2015, Ethereum 2016. Made some friends. Where I'm from is in Australia, in Sydney, in the Ethereum ecosystem there. But I went off and became an equity options trader over on the East Coast, actually in Philly for a few years at a firm called Susquehanna. And so I was trading market making equity options during the pandemic and actually with the GameStop, throughout the whole GameStop era, which was super fun. Got a really good sense for how crazy derivatives markets and options markets can be. And at the time, a guy I'd connected with was one of the early contributors on the white paper for the first version of synthetics. And we were looking at DeFi summer and the gaps in the market, and it really made sense. Options are like a really flexible, powerful financial primitive. You can do and create almost any payoff out of them. So putting them on a programmable sort of blockchain environment makes a ton of sense. And we got going in early 2021 on Lyra, which became Derive last year.
Yeah, awesome. I remember that vividly. It was kind of in the synthetics ecosystem, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so effectively kind of tied together using some of their mechanics.
That's right. Yeah, we
build
were
a separate product.
It was an AMM. We weren't a spin out. We were completely separate from them, but integrated tightly with their perps for some of the hedging for the V1, which was very different to where we are now. But back then it was an AMM. It was really a different time. When we first started building, L2s didn't exist. And so we were the first team to launch natively to an L2 in August 2021 on Optimism.
After
Wow. I remember
building
that.
Yeah. After building that options protocol, and now fast forward to today and seeing Coinbase acquire Deribit for $2.9 billion, what do you think? What do you think made Deribit ripe for that acquisition? And what do you think about Lira and sort of that path?
Yeah, options are, I think, the stickiest. They're the stickiest derivative vertical. Like they are anchored by flows which are more institutional, slow moving, and they rotate a lot less than I would say like the perp flows that we see in crypto today. And for a number of reasons. One, because of how like institutional the anchor flows are in options. You get like a massive Bitcoin miner buying puts every week because they have to hedge their cash flows. It's kind of like economic activity you just don't see in perps, which are more speculative and short term in their nature. So, because of that, like when Deribit started, I think they were one of the earliest like big exchanges around. And they did a great job of building like this business and the network effects. They were the only game in town for options. And so they brought on a bunch of these institutional users, whether it was like miners or, various people earning like Bitcoin and then ETH as part of their day to day, as well as, being able to generate yield at scale on these assets by selling volatility through options and selling, calls and selling puts and doing all sorts of crazy structures. And that advantage just compounds in a big way. You become the hub, and it is really difficult to rip capital away because when it's different to perps when someone sells a 6-month option on Bitcoin, a market maker owns that option, and they have to have their capital and their position sitting there on that exchange for 6 months or lay it off to someone else. And that position just exists. It's there. It's sticky. It keeps people coming back, and so it lowers the cost of capital for that market maker, and it creates better liquidity conditions. And you just don't see that dynamic anywhere else. So from our perspective, we are like, aiming to be, and, I would consider us like a category leader in on-chain options. We're going to be the first, and we are the first, and we're looking to build that network effect for ourselves. It's taken longer than I would have guessed in 2021, but they are typically the last derivative vertical to mature in a space. And I think we're really starting to see some tailwinds for them as a product and on chain at the moment. So exciting times.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I think that we've seen iterations of options in DeFi since 2020, basically. I mean, as you guys said, you guys launched on Optimism, in the first L2s in 21. There was some on ETH mainnet prior, but now it just seems like the level of sophistication of people entering the space is starting to get to that point where, I was talking to a market maker out in Colorado a couple months ago, and he was talking about how there's just so many basis trading inefficiencies. There's so many different kind of long tail strategies that are just not yet being played out at scale in crypto because of liquidity, because of the lack of products. And so, those types of minds coming to the capital markets of crypto will seems to change the kind of demand curve for where people are trying to look, where maybe it was just previously a lot of perps. And now that's kind of shifting to more, flexible or sophisticated products on chain.
Totally. And particularly as we see the sophistication of just economic activity increasing on chain, whether it's like RWAs themselves being issued or like on-chain native businesses and cash flows being generated, that's when options become really useful. When you have something that you need to generate yield on, either on chain or hedge into the future, like looking beyond, like a 3-day price action move, as fun as, trading short dated options can be as well.
So who's trading on Derive mostly? Like what type of people?
Yeah, we have like kind of an interesting mix. I would say there's like a good chunk of like I would describe them as like professional, like semi-pro, like kind of one-man sort of trading bands. People with chunky balances that like are sophisticated, know what they're doing, and have opinions that they want to express using options. And so we see, we know a lot of our top traders quite well. Like they message us, they talk to us, they're in our Discord, and they have a huge variety of strategies that they're trying to, kind of implement. Then on the other side, we work really closely with some of the largest sort of asset issuing protocols. Maybe they wouldn't agree with asset issuer as a category, but like, these new teams that have really found a lot of product market fit over the last couple of years, EtherFi, Lombard, and Athena, of course, as well, who we're really close with. They have large user bases, and they have these new assets that they want to imbue with useful things, the ability to generate yield at scale, or to use as collateral within a basis trade, or whatever it may be. I like the risk engine we built, and because of how flexible options are, you can really tailor the trades and the products to whatever those users want, and you can scale that up extremely easily with the exchange and the infra that we have. So we found a lot of fit with some of the large, on-chain sort of DeFi native hedge fund style outfits and family offices that are working closely with these teams on their push, and building products around their collaterals has been a big source of users and a flow for us as well.
Yeah. I think we remember Lyra on Optimism, but obviously now building Derive. Could you take us through, what happened in between? How did you go from Lyra on Optimism to Derive nowadays?
Yeah, it was just a gradual evolution alongside the tech itself. Like when we started, as I said, L2s weren't a thing. Certainly, like custom L2s weren't a thing, and it was really hard. And it was mainly a game of survival, like just trying stuff, getting a product out there that really wasn't like ideal, which was our first version. It worked, and LPs actually made money, which was kind of crazy for an options AMM, but it just couldn't scale. And ultimately, we came, I think, pretty early to the conclusion in early 2023 to the conclusion of our own Rollup with like a off-chain order book style architecture, which I think is now becoming like very common in crypto. And so that was, we spent like a year really designing and building the version of the protocol that's live now. And I think with that upgrade, we really wanted to sort of highlight the step change in what we were. We were no longer like just an AMM kind of in the corner of Optimism mainnet. We were like very much a full stack solution for institutional scale derivatives. And that was like really where the motivation came from. And we got the rebrand done from idea to implementation in about 2.5 weeks, all internal. So it was just a inspired push by some of the guys on the team who were super into the new brand.
100%. That's great. And now, it's not just that, you have a new brand, new visual, new look, new name. You also have this new Rollup. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's a sovereign Rollup, right? What are some of the things around the tech stack? Correct me if I'm wrong there, but going from kind of like a smart contract application on an L2, just a general purpose L2, to your own custom Rollup. What is the tech stack now? And after you enumerate that, what does that help you enable from the consumer facing side?
Yeah, so it's an OP stack rollup, and we use Celestia for data availability. I think there are a couple like major wins that we got from this. The first is just controlling the user experience and making it seamless. Like it's now closer to par for the course in terms of abstracting gas away, like having to sign and approve every transaction using your wallet. Like that for our users, it's like the same experience as a centralized exchange. You deposit and then it gets relayed through to the L2, and you're just making trades and clicking buttons, and it's all seamless like it would for a Web 2 application. So a lot of that account abstraction, like best in class user experience, comes from the ability to really control like gas and settle to Celestia to save a lot of money there for users. I think the second thing as well is for us, we have a unique use case with respect to like all of the margin settlement and clearing for options is really mathematically intensive. There's a lot of compute. And we found we were running up against gas limits on Optimism mainnet all the time. And that was for a much simpler protocol than the one we have like today in terms of like the amount of compute it needs to do. So by having our own chain and not competing for block space, you can go and build and expand like really the design space for the amount of guarantees you can put on chain and really like codify and make immutable like a lot of the crucial rules that big derivatives traders are potentially concerned by, like editing the margin or how liquidations are occurring. That's all on chain, gives strong guarantees, and it's only possible because we're not competing with a million other protocols for block space.
Yeah. Do you think that there's an edge that you're seeing from the users on your platform now, like or even yourself? I saw you post some trades for the last couple of weeks that you've been doing well on. Like, is there a consistent edge you've been seeing from your view of the users of Derive as far as like strategies go, or is there is there a current edge in the market that you think will be consistently able to be executed on? And perhaps if you can say it publicly, then maybe it's not the actual edge. So
yeah, I would say whatever I could say now is like it changes all the time, like and particularly with options. I would say like my hunch in general and my bias is that wings continue to be underpriced in crypto. Like they're really like kind of far out there, options, and the sort of closer to the at the money options are overpriced with respect to volatility. So to put that into context, the trade that I made last week, which was to be very clear, like lucky, like you have to be lucky to get any sort of result when you're doing these sorts of trades. But essentially, like I think it was ETH was at 1780, the S&P 500 was kind of like back to where it was pre-tariffs. Bitcoin was stronger than ever. It was close to 100K, and ETH was at 1780, and it was a Tuesday, and then the Friday expiry, so you had 3 days. The 1850 calls were trading at like $7. So like if ETH just rallied to 1900, you'd be making 7 to 1 on those calls. And I kind of just looked at it and went, this doesn't feel like right. Like I did not expect 50% in a week, but like it just felt like a cheap shot to take. And you can even fund that bet by selling some puts, like downside puts, and you almost do it premium free. And you can if you sell like the 40-50 delta, so you sell like the 1700 puts, or and you buy like the sort of upside calls, you get this cheap wing, and you're financing it with like sort of chunkier, more at the money style options. And I got really lucky. Like it rallied, to 2,400 by the end of the week. And that won't happen every time. But I think it'll, like, the cool thing about options is it kind of allows you to have that nuance of opinion. Like if it does make it out of this range in the next few days, it's really going to make it out of this range, which is essentially what that bet was, and expressed, with options. But I do think there's still work we need to do to make that expressiveness more available to a wider user base. And I think that's one big focus for us this year.
Great, Nick. Well, man, thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. And really just been wanting to just track more and more of these, app chains, rollups that have made an opinionated infrastructure stack, verticalized, and then now basically your goal is distribution, right? Go out there and get this product into as many hands as possible. So, best of luck with the next couple months. Hope you enjoyed the bull market. Should be good for volumes. And yeah, man, thanks for coming out.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Nick. See you next time.
Cheers.
All right. That wraps up the guest segments today. There's a good one there with Nick. Definitely just hit like a 50K ETH options trade. That was
great to see.
It's a bull market, man. I mean, ETH's pumping even just while we've been on the stream. So
yeah, what do you see out there?
I don't know. I don't really see much. I just see a lot of green, and feel like feel like this week's gonna end well. And I'm thinking Bitcoin to all-time highs pretty soon. So
one thing that I like about this format is that it forces like me and us to look from the outside and looking in, meaning that I'm getting feelings that I haven't had since way back when we first started this, and we were totally looking at something that was foreign and new, and it was like we didn't know about the on-chain world, we didn't know about smart contracts and Aave and Uniswap and yield farms, but we were learning about it in real time. And I think what this format is forcing me to do is think like from a normal viewpoint, from a normal, just real world perspective, is this company going to add value to the economy? Is it going to give end users a real sense of value? And is it helping people out there? Is there a real business case for this? I think in the Rollup podcast, we get so into the weeds of the technical design and blockchain architecture of, are you using this stack and this throughput and this latency? And it was almost like we were critiquing these roll-up architectures in real time. We didn't really have a sense of the business propositions that a lot of these companies are making and taking. And so I can already feel, my sense of due diligence when it comes to validating some of these business ideas is getting pushed to the limit. I think it's making me a better thinker overall. And I think this will end up helping us on the venture portfolio side as well.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's just that between the different types of guests, different types of conversations, shorter, more dynamic style, also the just like the tech setup, the streams, all of that mixed in with just kind of taking a new swing. I agree. It feels like there's just it feels like there's still things to learn and to be a part of, and so I'm excited to grow and scale this. Today's was pretty good. We got off to a bit of a late start. Felt like just got to get up and get going. Got through those topics quickly. All three of the conversations were really interesting. Neil's robot was probably my highlight. That was that was hilarious. But yeah, man, looking forward to Thursday. It's been a great show, and we'll roll it up and get on to the next one.
Absolutely. And this is the roll up, and I think the unique perspective that I think we can bring to the table is the combination of we can roll up AI, crypto, and robotics into a single through line. And I think, that is something that the current meta is missing. And I think we're here to bring it. It's something that personally, if we weren't doing this, it'd be something that I would be looking for and watching myself. So I'm glad that we're here doing it together and we're filling a space and we're filling a gap in the space. So yeah, thanks for
tuning in, guys. It's been a great episode. See you guys on Thursday.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.